chat. Very pleased to introduce Paul Gichiru of Nature Kenya. Paul is a wildlife ecologist by training and has done both undergraduate and postgraduate courses on that subject. He's the Sites and Species Programme Manager for Nature Kenya and oversees the scientific work that goes into and informs all of Nature Kenya's work across the country. And of course, he's responsible and involved in both of the sites that we're going to particularly hear about this evening. So just to say, we are recording the talk tonight. If you can please stay muted through the talk, and at the end of the talk, if you want to put some questions on the chat, I will, whatever time is remaining, I will pull those questions off and allow Paul to answer them. So without further ado, thank you very much, and over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul Buckley, and good evening, everyone from Kenya, Nairobi. Nice evening here, and welcome to this presentation that I'll do now present to you this evening on safeguarding Kenya's endemic species or two critical sites within the Taita Hills, looking at the Taita Palace, and I'll integrate also the Taita thrush within the presentation, and also the Clark's River in one of the other critical habitats called the Dakata Woodland. So welcome, and I hope you'll take the journey with us as we continue working within our country to safeguard these iconic species in our country. So let's move ahead. So Nature Kenya, we are the East African Natural History Society, founded in 1909, mainly to promote the study and conservation of nature within the East African region. And we are a membership society, and we derive our strength from our membership, mainly who support our work across the country, mainly supporting our work across the country. And with this, we work around 4 strategic pillars in our organization: to save species, conserve sites and habitats, to promote ecological sustainability, where we work closely with governments and to ensure that appropriate policy processes are carried out, and also, without forgetting, and most important critical part of our work is to empower people to support nature across all the sites that we work in. And in Kenya, we are working in 67 of these sites that have been designated as key biodiversity areas. And within these sites, they help in ensuring that we safeguard our endemic bird species and other critical biodiversity within these sites. And most importantly, Nature Kenya is a birdlife partner within Kenya, and we work within the partnership across Africa to be able to promote and safeguard critical sites across our country, as well as supporting other partners, collaborating with other partners across the region. And our work is science-based, and we work to empower local communities to promote conservation within the sites, and linking livelihoods and biodiversity conservation, and mainly advocating and for sound governance and planning for a sustainable future within these critical sites in our country. So for this presentation, I will be delving more on key strategies that we have used aimed at saving these threatened species, as well as complementing safeguarding other critical species within the same sites, and by so doing, protecting the environment that sustain livelihoods of the local people who live within and adjacent to these critical habitats. And I'll be talking about the Taita Palace and the Taita thrush, as well as the Clark's River, which is found within the Taita Hills and Dakatcha Woodland. So moving into the Taita Hills, these are critical and globally diverse hotspot in our country. it's a site which is designated as a key biodiversity area and an alliance for zero extinction. And it's globally, it is one of the most important, among 34 important strongholds for natural diversity. It's a center for endemism with high density of endemic species across among the East Afro mountain hotspot with 13 plant species endemic to the site, alongside 2 mammal species, reptiles, amphibians, butterflies, and not forgetting these 2 iconic bird species that we found within the Taita Hills. Geographically, for those who have not been to our region, is the Taita Hills are in the southern end of Kenya, close to Tanzania, and the mountains are highlighted in green are the Eastern Arc Mountains, with the Taita Hills being on the northmost part of the Eastern Arc Mountains, and they are among the smallest fragments of the Eastern Arc Mountains. And within that small fragment of the Taita Hills, it has around 13 forest patches that are highly fragmented, and only 2% of the fragments are forested and are critical for biodiversity persistence. And therefore, within this site, we have been working with lead scientists and species guardian within our country who have been carrying out demographic studies of this species, the Taita pallid and Taita thrush, using different methodologies, mainly to inform and to guide us on how, on using scientific methodology, on how to be able to inform and to respond adaptively within our management and conservation programs within the site. So different methodology has been applied using radio tracking of these species to see how they are moving around their habitat, how they use their foraging areas, the breeding areas, and territories within the Taita Hills, as well as vegetation mapping of these species and seeing how habitat suitability varies across the different fragments of the Taita Hills. And to date, science has told us, and the results have showed us, that Taita pallid is one of the rarest, most threatened birds in the world, with around 150, 200 individuals remaining within, and they're only restricted within the Taita Hills. And with this, we only find them in 3 small fragments of forests within the Taita Hills, and we have recorded other site extinctions across other smaller fragments within the Taita Hills. So the hills that are only that the species is found are the ones circled in red on your screen. And these surveys have been going on since early 2000, and we continue with the surveys to date. The Taita thrush, on the other hand, is relatively has a better population, around 1,200, still very threatened and very rare species, and still found within these small fragments of forest. And it's only found in 4 fragments of the Taita Hills. And within this, one of the fragments, the one on the top right fragment called Bololo, is one of the strongholds for this species within Taita Hills. So what is science telling us? One of the key things is indicate, which field research is showing us, is that the Taita pallid is highly restricted to forest edge, indigenous forest edge sections of the Taita Hills. And it's significantly absent in areas that have exotic monoculture plantations within the Taita Hills. And within these forest fragments that have indigenous good pockets of edge vegetation, the breeding success is very low due to human disturbance, mainly due to elements of forest fires, elements of agricultural expansion, and within the protected areas, issues to do with livestock incursions within this area, because the challenge with the Taita pallid is the nesting behavior, which is around, they have a nest around a meter and a half above the ground, and therefore issues of livestock trampling is make it significantly susceptible to reducing breeding success of the species, as well as reduced habitat suitability within the forests of the Taita Hills. And something else which has come up and is still being discussed and still being explored is elements to do with climate change. And this I say because the Taita apalis has been seen to have gone locally extinct in forest fragments that are of lower altitude. So, and the areas that still remain with good populations is the forest fragment of higher altitude, that is Buria forest, which is at least 2,000 meters above sea level. So even though there's low nesting success, there is still those discussions and that hypothesis which is still being explored of association of elevation and also global warming, and that is an ongoing research which will help us to answer the question of whether climate change has a great impact on the survival of the Taita apalis. So that is ongoing as we speak. So from science, we identified key territories for the Taita apalis across Taita Hills. And one of the strongholds, which is Buria forest, from my previous slide, we recorded, or those high records of around 15%, 15-20% of the Taita apalis territories were outside protected areas falling within private lands. And therefore, to be able to safeguard these sites, there was need for identifying innovative ways to be able to safeguard these sites, these critical habitats for the Taita apalis. And with this, one of the approaches that Nature Kenya explored was using approaches of land leasing and land purchase. And we were able, with support from funding from the ABC RSPP Wildlife Trust, lease the first parcel, which is in green, for 25 years, which hosts around 7 to 12% of the territories within the Buria Hill. And moving forward with additional funding from the Rainforest Trust, we were able to safeguard additional habitat, suitable habitat for the Taita apalis through land purchase. And therefore, to date, the ones, the areas in the arrows are parcels which have been safeguarded in one or another through land purchase and land lease, and some which are still ongoing negotiations for safeguarding. And working closely with the local communities within this area to be able to have compatible land uses as we continue innovating ways for being able to safeguard these critical habitats for the Taita apalis. So this is one approach that science has helped us or has led us towards safeguarding critical habitats for these species that we are focusing on today. In addition to that, we are working closely with governments, both local at county level and national government, towards putting or informing enabling policy frameworks that will ensure that the plight of the Taita apalis and Taita thrush are safeguarded through developing action plans, working with the Taita county government, because these forests within Taita County some are county forests, some are under the national government, where we are working towards integrating conservation of these species within the county policy processes. Given that the counties in Kenya are relatively young governments, which are at least 10 years now, they hold a significant mandate for being able to help in safeguarding these critical habitats, which are home to this critical biodiversity and therefore integrating their conservation management practices is important to be able to have them mainstreamed. We have also worked with experts to develop a Taita Hills forest restoration strategy, which is helping to guide the different approaches of restoration and seeking sites that are suitable for the Taita apalis and Taita thrush, and providing guidance on approaches for restoration. And one of the approaches that has been integrated within the restoration strategy and we are integrating in policy is elements to do with identifying sites that are that have exotic species of plantations that can be converted to indigenous which can be converted to indigenous vegetation, and which show good indication of ensuring that populations of the indigenous endemic species return within these sites. And one of the work which has been ongoing from 2013, research work has been felling 1 or 2 trees of exotic species and creating gaps in the forest and monitoring it across the years to see what type of vegetation is coming back and whether these gaps are being utilized by local and endemic species. And so far, within the gaps, smaller gaps that have been established, there have been records of the Taita palis utilizing these gaps for foraging within Gangao forests of the Taita Hills. Moving on, for using this as a baseline or a basis for indicating that restoration would actually have positive impacts on these species. With support from the RSPB, we were able to expand the restoration areas to at least around 4 hectares of size, where we eradicated exotic species of trees and creating and putting in place natural regeneration. And so far, within these larger blocks of forest, we have larger blocks of restoration areas, we have seen endemic species or indigenous species coming back of vegetation. And research is ongoing to document the colonization of Taita palis within this site, as well as other bird species within the Taita Hills. And we have seen that using this approach, which is a good policy or advocacy platform to help us to advocate for safeguarding these sites, we can confidently say that eradicating exotic plantations or smaller portions of an exotic plantation, there's enough seed bank within these sites that can be able to have natural regeneration coming out from coming back for native vegetation within the Taita Hills. Then finally, we are engaging local communities actively because they are the nucleus of change, or they are the foundation that makes the Taita Hills, that ensures the Taita Hills is safeguarded. So working with site support groups, community forest associations, we are slowly changing perceptions and attitudes on how to utilize the forest sustainably through livelihood improvement programs, forest restoration, working with these groups, awareness creation and advocacy that ensures that the people are aware about the importance of the vital ecosystem services that the forest provides. That includes water, pollination services, and therefore there is continuous attitude change and people seeing the importance of the forest because of the livelihood nature-based enterprises that can be derived from the forest. One example being butterfly farming, others being beekeeping, as well as places for extraction of forage for their livestock. And finally, working with local communities as well to ensure that the areas that have been bought and the new reserves that have been established, that we have local community warden who helps in surveillance and awareness creation within the sites. One key threat which threatens Taita Hills is issues of fires, especially during the dry seasons, and this increased surveillance help in mitigating, especially these erratic forest fires that would happen within the Taita Hills. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a brief overview of our work within the Taita Hills. And now I would like to take you across around 200 kilometers away from the Taita Hills to the Dakata Woodland, which is another critical key biodiversity area that hosts other endemic species of biodiversity. And the Dakata Woodland, this is an aerial view. The Dakata Woodland is a relatively flat area, very close to the coast, and is a dry forest in the north coast of Kenya. For those who have been to the coast of Kenya, it is north of the Arabuko Sokoke forest. This region is this woodland is not protected, does not have any form of protection, and most of the land is within the community, within the hands of the community, and it's only known breeding sites for the endemic Clark's Weaver. So it's a critical habitat for this species, and therefore for us is a prime area for promoting and ensuring that we safeguard this site. So geographically, the Dakatcha Woodland is around 180,000 hectares in size, and it's located to the north coast of Kenya. And within that area, the forest is characterized by different types of mainly Brachystegia species, or what you would call the Miombo type of woodland. It's the northernmost part of the Miombo woodland, which stretch from areas in Zambia, Tanzania into Kenya, and also has other species like Xenometra, which is good and suitable habitats for the endemic Scops owl. And mainly the Brachystegia woodland is the foraging area for the Clark's Weaver. And the Dakatcha woodland is important to other species as well. We have the Sokoke, endangered Sokoke pipit, Sokoke Scops owl, mammal species like the golden rap elephant sengi. We have other species that are near threatened within Dakatcha woodland. Just to mention, just to show you two species on your screen. We have migrants as well within this landscape that pass through this landscape during the migratory season. But as indicated earlier, it's the only known breeding site for the Clark's Weaver. The story of the Clark's Weaver is rather interesting, and it was relatively recently discovered in 2013 that it breeds in Dakatcha, in the wetlands in Dakatcha woodland. It has been recorded in Arabuko Sokoke for a long time, but no one had ever recorded it breeding within Arabuko Sokoke. And therefore, there was continuous exploration and surveys to see where does this bird actually go and breed. And in 2013, a team led by one of our best birders and mentors, Fla, went around in Dakatcha woodland wetlands, and they found they stumbled upon one of the birds nesting in one of the wetlands, Bore wetlands in Dakatcha woodland. And subsequently, from that year, having known that it's nesting within Dakatcha woodland, we have recorded the birds nesting subsequently in 2015, 2017. Even last year and early this year, we have seen a few nests of the Clark's Weaver within the wetlands in Dakatcha. And therefore, looking at the map on your screen, we have mapped out wetlands across Dakatcha, and the stars indicate where we have recorded the Clark's Weaver nesting. And therefore showing that, yes, Dakatcha woodland is critical for the Clark's Weaver, and given that it's breeding within the seasonal wetlands within the Dakatcha landscape. And with this, we have been able to move forward towards safeguarding these sites, having had this skill, having known this information at hand. However, Dakatcha woodland is facing significant threats, which are mainly driven by the land tenure system within Dakatcha. A lot of the land is unadjudicated, and within this there is limited land governance structures. Even though as recently as the last 2 years back, this area has been designated as a county forest, that limited land governance structure has not provided good foundation to be able to stop or to hold the destruction and the clearance of the land within Dakatcha. And therefore, and this is mainly driven by the livelihood or the status of the communities that are found within Dakatcha, which within our country, a lot of the community within Dakatcha Woodland are termed as poor. This is a map indicating the changes of landscape within a change of land use within Dakatcha from 2001 to 2020. And you can see there's been increased cultivation or cropland area, and therefore inversely also having an impact on forests and suitable habitat vegetation for the Clark's River. And therefore, between 2001 to 2020, we have had increase in crop area, and the main approaches of cultivation is shift cultivation. Therefore, and that is not sustainable at all, because there is every 2 years people clear new land for crop production. And this we have also recorded destruction or reduced in forest area, mainly driven by charcoal production. And the charcoal produced, given that of poor land governance structures, a lot of people just go into the forest. Is like open access. People go into the woodland, clear an area, get charcoal for commercial purposes to be sold in major towns like Mombasa, Malindi, even Nairobi, for household use. And this has been one of the key drivers towards the losses of the critical woodland in Dakatcha. New threats are emerging within Dakatcha, which are mainly through land sale and mainly for speculation. Kenya issues of land the issues of land purchase has been very high within our country. People speculating and purchasing land, and the proposed land uses or the land uses that they want to carry out are very varied, and majority are doing it for agricultural purposes, with big agricultural companies going into Dakatcha to mainly expand pineapple farming. Others are buying land for commercial charcoal production, and also some are driven by the local politician, mainly advocating for expansion of agricultural land. And this threat has made Nature Kenya think of ways of safeguarding, learning from Taita, of safeguarding these sites through approaches of land purchase, mainly targeting suitable breeding sites and foraging areas for the Clark's River. And with this, with funding from ABC, Wildland Trust and Resolve, we used a criteria of identifying suitable habitats. That is 1, breeding areas, so wetlands were critical, and 2, suitable foraging areas, that is the Brachycedia forests, Brachycedia woodland within Dakatcha Woodland. And using that criteria, we were able to identify land, engaging local communities, and to date, we have been able to safeguard through land purchase and getting commitment from local communities, 1,800 acres to a new reserve called the Kamare Nature Reserve. When we started, we were safeguarding the Clark's River. And over time, given that this is a relatively new reserve, around 2 years maximum reserve, we have been able to record other species utilizing the same landscape. That is, we have recorded lions, buffalo, most recently, as well as the golden rapid and shrew. And we continue surveying to be able to ensure that we're able to record what the species within this land and increasing the conservation profile of these reserves. And we're engaging the government, both local, county governments, and national governments, to be able to gazette this landscape as a national reserve within Dakatcha Woodland. Secondly, we are working closely with local communities to be able for them to safeguard and bring together and consolidate land as community conserved areas. And here, where basically in educating and raising awareness of the importance of compatible land use. Clearing woodland does not help, and the most compatible land uses within Dakatcha Woodland, for example, livestock farming or ranching is a more compatible land use. So working with the local communities who have agreed to consolidate land, like for example, we have the Wada, which is an indigenous community who have set aside around 3,500 acres of indigenous community conserved areas. We have others like the Kibaoni area, which is around 1,000 acres, mainly working with that community, who then we can ensure that they get incentives and to incentivize them to be able to safeguard and set aside land for conservation. In addition to this is providing and ensuring that the local community working groups, site support groups who carry out monitoring, routine monitoring, identifying new sites for which are suitable for Clark's River and monitoring the wetlands that have already been identified and other additional sites across the landscape, who have been useful in IBA monitoring and also using bird watching as an ecotourism venture, have been very useful as part of community engagement for local action. Overall, conservation of Dakatcha Woodland as it is in the Taita Hills, there is need for community providing incentives for local communities to ensure that they're able to identify themselves with the woodland and conservation efforts. And working with corporates in Dakatcha in particular, we have been able to, corporate members of Nature Kenya, improved education system through construction of classrooms in local primary schools, and also threat removal for mainly looking at usage of fuel wood and wood biomass at household level, whereby introducing energy efficient cook stoves at household level and also in local schools, which then reduce demand for local fuel wood. But this is not enough, given that a lot of charcoal is not consumed at the local level, but in other major cities outside the Dakatcha Woodland. And therefore, working at policy level, at county level, and at county and national level to ensure that we entrench and control and regulate these offtakes and stopping of illegal and unsustainable way of harvesting and charcoal producing within the Dakatcha Woodland. And therefore, we are engaging also at the policy level within Kilifi County. And as I've mentioned earlier, looking at incentives for local communities which are compatible within the Dakatcha Woodland. For example, beekeeping, working with women in conservation who are rearing chicken, indigenous chicken for food and also for trade, and also ecotourism using birding and also their geological features within the Dakatcha Woodland, like one area called Hell's Kitchen that helps in promoting ecotourism in that area, and also other cultural sites that are within Dakatcha Woodland. And in 2019, just to give you an example, in 2019, the community earned approximately around $30,000 from mainly beekeeping and ecotourism, given that those were the two main ventures that earned quite good money within that year. Poultry keeping, at household level, there was improvement on nutrition, which values were more intrinsic and not monetized. So looking forward into the future, there's still more work which needs to go on. In the Dakatcha Woodland, like for the Clark's River, there's still need for more research to be carried out to be able to identify where these species go, the Clark's River mainly. In the Taita Hills, species monitoring will need to continue. One key thing that we are promoting now is issues to do with forest and landscape restoration. The Dakatcha Woodland is highly degraded, and we are working with local communities to be able to restore these sites. In Taita Hills, there are areas which have been identified as degraded, and working towards that natural regeneration approach. We need to continue promoting that practice within these landscapes. Seeking innovative tactics to safeguard the species and their habitats. Land purchase is one approach. We might find other approaches as we move into the future, as things evolve, as tactics to safeguard the site. Community engagement and providing incentives for these local communities is critical, because then they can identify themselves and see the benefits for safeguarding their sites. And as well as working with local governments, both at policy level, as well as ensuring that there's enough advocacy and entrenchment and policy frameworks to ensure that these sites are safeguarded. We need to continue enhancing partnerships, both locally and internationally, to be able to continue safeguarding these sites for the benefit of the critical endemic species. And finally, is the need for resources, because all this work requires funding to be able and manpower to continue to ensure that we are present on the ground and our partners are present on the ground to continue the good work without losing the momentum. Because the momentum we have been able to achieve to date needs to continue until we see that the duty bearers that our government have taken up the responsibility to be able to safeguard these sites and into the future. So resource mobilization is a continuous effort across within our work to ensure that this work is the momentum that we have gained in the recent past, that we don't lose it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, is Dakata Woodland and Taita Hills. So I would welcome you, for those who have not been to Kenya, when COVID issues are eased up and you're able to travel, please visit us. Come to the Taita Hills, the cloud forest of the Taita Hills. We're welcome you to come and visit and see this endemic species and interact with us and with the local communities and the cracks weaver within the Dakatcha Woodland, because these sites are important not only for this biodiversity to the people, and Nature Kenya is in the forefront towards working to be able to ensure that the species do not go extinct within my lifetime and in the lifetime into the future. So thank you very much, and I thank all our partners and people who have supported this work, from the Species Garden in Taita Hills and partners across the landscape, and the funding that we have received from ABC, Warner Trust, Rainforest Trust, and the technical support from the RSPB, among others, which we acknowledge within this slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was a brilliant talk. And I think I've been lucky enough to go to both of the sites, albeit very briefly. And I know that it's worth emphasising that they are not the easy sites to protect. Some sites it might be quite easy to protect. These are really tough, difficult areas with lots and lots of different issues and threats. And I'm really impressed the way that Nature Kenya have used so many different approaches to try to safeguard the two areas. I've got do post your questions on the chat. I'll just while they come in, I'll just ask one, I suppose, initially, Paul. I suppose for both of the areas, there's a lot of issues with the local communities, and I'm just wondering, particularly at Taita Hills, in the long run, do you think that spans some of these very, very small area forest fragments, given the very quite dense human populations and obviously the multiple needs that they have? And I suppose for both sites, I'm wondering what are the prospects for government to perhaps designate more areas as forest reserves to get some statutory protection, as well as the protection you're getting through land purchase?
So thank you, Paul. Within the Taita Hills, we have areas already defined as county forest and government forests. So, and those are the forest fragments that I showed within the presentation. So the tactics within the Taita Hills is not the expansion, for example, what we are doing through land purchase or creating new reserves, especially around this forest, is one tactic that we are employing, and ensuring that these areas will be gazetted by government as new reserves to expand the protected area network. But outside within the community areas, is mainly looking at providing suitable habitats, creating hedgerows, and increasing habitat suitability within the community areas, around the critical habitats within the Taita Hills. So that's one approach, mainly for the Taita Hills. In Dakatcha, on the other hand, given that it's a county forest, is working at that policy level to ensure that the county government is able to gazette areas and create and have clear boundaries of these conservation areas. The Kamare Reserve, which Nature Kenya has been able to establish, is one of the areas that we are hoping is going to be gazetted. The community conserved areas that the committees are setting aside, there are other areas. We have other stakeholders that have set aside, who have established other reserves that are private reserves, others which need to be recognized. But mostly within Dakatcha Woodland, there is higher prospects of establishing new reserves compared to the Taita Hills, given the dynamics of land availability overall, and how the communities is settled within the Dakatcha Woodland. Thank you.
Thanks, Gichiru. I've got a question. It's a bit of a follow-up to that, I think, from Ian Francis, who I know is one of those you acknowledged who's visited the area. Ian was asking, I guess specifically in relation to the restoration of the forests themselves, where obviously Nature Kenya has been able to do some work to push the commercial plantations back towards native forest, and wondering whether there's any moves by Kenya Forest Service and others to I suppose take on some of that work, given their statutory remit. One would hope they might also be able to support some of this work.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, and nice to hear from you. And about felling of these plantations, for the past 3 years in Kenya, we have had a moratorium for tree felling, government directive for any tree felling within the country. So that has really stagnated the discussions of expansion or clearing or felling of these plantations. So Kenya Forest Service is still desirous until the government directive is lifted with clear guidelines, then we'll be able to pick up the discussion. But we have been able to visit the sites with Kenya Forest Service. They have been able to see and we have already shared the data with them and the maps with them, and they clearly see the benefits of this. They still need, of course, Kenya still requires timber for household or for use and the industry. But overall, they can be regulated offtake and within the plantations in the country. This is an ongoing discussion, and Kenya Forest Service is open to that discussion, and we continue monitoring and keeping a close eye on this. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian, and thanks, Paul. A question from Uganda, from Jonathan Onongo. Was wondering about what you know about the vulnerability of these two species to potential climate change.
That's a very scientific question, Jonathan. As indicated in the presentation, for the Taita Palace, that's an ongoing debate, and more research is ongoing to see the climate vulnerabilities, climate change vulnerabilities, looking at this at the Taita Palace in particular, issues of either global warming, given that it is gone extinct in the lower altitude forests. The other side, on the Clarks River, given that its breeding is dependent on wetlands, and wetlands, if there's no water, the wetlands do not have the vegetation the reeds and the papyrus, which provide suitable anchoring places for nesting. So if you think of climate change variabilities on weather and rainfall patterns, then like for the Clark's River, it will be highly vulnerable. If there's no rain and drought spells continue, it will reduce I believe it will reduce their breeding success or breeding routines. So that is still an open question. I don't have the answers to it, but there's still some hypotheses which you still need to keep trying, but they are definitely susceptible to climate change, both species, as we speak.
And maybe I can just sort of a slight follow up on that, Paul. I know that in the past that the colonies where you've found the Clark's Weaver, they've been in different wetlands in different years, and obviously that's quite a challenge when you've got a very large area, and you've obviously been able to purchase 1,800 acres. You've got hopefully a community conservation area covering some more areas. But I wonder sort of how confident you are that you can capture the main wetlands areas of these rather mobile species.
So yeah, thank you, Paul. So one approach, and that is on policy level. In Kenya, our wetlands are recognized in law as areas that should not be converted for like conversion of wetlands to cropland, etc. So working within the county government, as we speak, we are working with the county government of Kilifi in what they're calling the spatial plan, where we are integrating these wetlands to be able to be safeguarded within the Kilifi County policy framework. So one approach is being able to have these wetlands in policy and recorded as they are in policy, so that they're able to be protected. Secondly is safeguarding the foraging areas, that is the woodland that this species has been recorded, especially the Dakatcha woodland that this species has been recorded to utilize for foraging. So at least as we speak, given that when Nature Kenya has purchased land is very good Dakatcha woodland, we believe that the species would still continue to utilize that area. On the wetlands, given the variability of weather, like now we are in a drought season in Kenya, the wetlands within the land purchase area, the Kamara area, do not have water now. So we are hoping that if the rain comes in the later on, maybe in October, there will be water, there will be good seasonal wetlands will come back. So we continue monitoring and working with the local communities to ensure that this woodland first is safeguarded, and then with the wetlands, then we'll be able to safeguard these critical habitats for the Clark's River.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I've got a couple more questions. Got one from Abubakar Mohammed, who was asking whether there's been any, whether you or anyone else has done much in the way of locally based education about wildlife conservation issues, so that the local people are more aware and sympathetic about the issues, and also what the approach, the sort of response, if any, of government bodies has been to the significant logging that's taken place, I guess particularly at Dakatcha.
So on issues of advocacy, awareness and local community education, that's a continuous program that Nature Kenya has, working with the site support groups and the community forest associations, for example, within both sites and other sites across the country. And we have evolved this program and adaptive management using village level meetings for people, for communities to talk about it. And within Dakata Woodland, they have even formed what you're calling a Dakata Woodland Conservation Committee, which is chaired by government, and they have routine meetings, and there'll be a meeting next week, I think on the 8th, if I'm not wrong, where they'll be discussing elements to do with issues of charcoal production in Dakatcha Woodland. So this education work is an ongoing process, and we are actively engaging and ensuring that we back the community and working with the nucleus of change, the site support groups we work with. We see with their capacity being enhanced, they're able to advocate and shout and raise awareness about the importance of this woodland. On issues to do with logging in Dakatcha, in Kenya, we've had this logging which occurs is illegal because we have had a ban on cutting of trees. So there are politicians, there are people of high influence within the government, within those local governments, that we need to ensure that we are able to ensure that this element is stopped. And that's one of the reasons why next week there's that meeting, which is chaired by the local, the deputy county commissioner, to talk about the rampant increase of charcoal production in tree felling. So we continue. It's a complicated issue because of changing of the tactics, but we keep an eye and support the local communities to ensure that they progress their actions effectively.
And thank you, Paul. And a sort of bit of a follow-up to that from Diana of I'm sure you know Nature Uganda. She was just wondering to what extent you've been able to succeed in the local communities really appreciating the benefits that conservation can give them for their livelihoods, and whether it's, whether you feel you're making progress on that area.
I think there is progress in one or another towards change of perception and attitudes of the benefits of nature or benefits derived from the natural system. And this, as we speak, as I mentioned in the presentation, where we are seeing community groups or community members bringing together their land to form community conserved area, is one indicator that we can say that is a positive indicator towards seeing that the community is changing attitudes towards safeguarding the habitats. Secondly, with the incentives, and these incentives require significant financial support, is when we are providing the incentives, there's a linkage that is ensure that there's a linkage between the incentives and nature conservation. So, for example, beekeeping as one, the issues of chicken farming as another, where we are changing attitudes of women who collect firewood and are out there in the field. So this type of incentives, we use them to help in easing the messaging of importance of conservation to the local communities. So incentives are one of the approaches that we are using, and we are monitoring this to see whether there is a direct correlation towards ensuring that the areas are safeguarded. Because these elements of change of perception and attitudes, these social elements are very dynamic, and we need to keep a close eye and adaptive management as we continue working with local communities.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure you're right, Paul. Just a different kind of question from David Fox, our chairman, who was wondering whether you, with respect to the Clark's Weaver, would you encourage us to continue to call it Clark's Weaver, or there's an alternative name of Kalifi Weaver, which perhaps is a more sort of local bird, means a bit more to local people. I wonder if you would encourage us to adopt that name change.
That has been discussed. I believe, to me personally, I would say, of course, Kilifi Weaver resonate easily with people, and also if for advocacy purposes, with working with the local county government, having a bird named after their county, then it will help in like soothing or smoothing the information through the county government system. So I think Kilifi Weaver would be useful to having, so that there's a connection with the local community. But I think that I would leave to the birds experts across within this forum and others to be able to help us in seeing whether there will be a good change of name for this species. But we have used also Kilifi Weaver within our documentation.
Thanks, Paul. I think we've probably had most of the questions. There's been lots of kind words about your presentation. Mengistu from Ethiopia saying great presentation, efforts to safeguard the endemic species. We've got a message from Ngoni down south in Zimbabwe, saying really enjoyed the presentation, lots of similarities as far as the impacts on biodiversity in different areas, and that environmental policy is really important to correct. I'll just ask one final question from Mercy Kariuki, who's asked about the, you did mention briefly the site support groups that you've established, particularly in Dakatcha. How has Nature Kenya enhanced the local community? I suppose how has the SSG managed to enhance the resilience of the conservation of these species, and what the role of site support groups in perhaps consolidating that long-term impact of the work that Nature Kenya have been doing? I don't know if you've got any observations on that.
Yeah, so to us, site support groups, the site support groups within the Nature Kenya framework is we refer to them as small Nature Kenyans across those sites that we work in. So therefore, so they carry the vision and ambitions of Nature Kenya at site level. And in Dakatcha Woodland, for example, for the newly established Kamare Nature Reserve, the Dakatcha Woodland Conservation Group are co-managers of this land. So they are the ones who have recruited a warden who we are supporting, and they carry out monitoring and ensure the continuous surveillance with our support in the background. So the element of working with local communities to safeguard the sites, that's one of the approaches that Nature Kenya is using. Others within the incentives that you're providing to the local communities, the land use, the incentives that are compatible, they are the nucleus of change that help in getting to the local communities. So we work with them to ensure that issues of community integration, they are the ones in the forefront, with Nature Kenya leading from behind. So that's how our approach is within the Dakatcha Woodland and other sites that we work in within our country.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a fantastic model. I think we'll probably stop there, Paul. It's gone 5. There's again kind words, and I notice a note from Julius Aranatwi, BirdLife. Thanks, Paul. Nature Kenya is doing a brilliant job. Just one final question, because it is a good one. In terms of the future, this is from Caroline and Jockey. In terms of the future, are you optimistic? And is it going to be possible to perhaps find more areas of land to lease or purchase if you're able to get the right areas at the right price?
This is still being explored. Taita Hills, this issue of land purchase and land lease within the Taita Hills has been we have had significant lessons learned from doing this, given the elements of especially absentee landlords of land, deceased landowners. So there's been a lot of lessons learned as we are doing the land purchase and land lease within the Taita Hills. There is still potential, but we rely on the science that is guiding us. If the Taita Palace falls within, and this has been discussed within the conservation group led by the species guardian, if we find suitable areas, then we can continue exploring those options of either land lease and land purchase. So it's an open-ended framework for safeguarding the species within the Taita Hills.
Thanks, Paul. And thank you for all the questions, everybody. We'll stop there. I'd like to just, again, thank you so much for that excellent presentation. I hope that's given everyone a bit of an insight into the fabulous conservation work that Nature Kenya implements all around the country. And thanks ever so much. We have recorded the talk, so if you missed some of it, I know some of you joined and had problems perhaps joining, there will be an opportunity to see it again. So anyway, thank you very much. I wish you a good afternoon or a good evening, wherever you are. And we will organise some more talks, and we'll be in touch and let you know when they occur. So again, thanks very much to Paul and Nature Kenya, and I wish you a good evening.